Welcome back to the Longevity Lab, the place where we deconstruct the science of aging to help you live not just longer, but better. I'm your host, Sarah, and today we are tackling a topic that is frankly terrifying because of how invisible it is. We are talking about the heart, specifically the 3 warning signs of heart failure that 90% of seniors completely ignore until it's too late. Joining me is Dr. Julian, a leading cardiologist with over 20 years of experience in geriatric care. Dr. Julian, why is it that heart failure is so often missed in the over 60 population?
It's a tragedy of perception, Sarah. People expect to feel a crushing chest pain like a Hollywood movie heart attack. But chronic heart failure doesn't usually work that way. It's subtle. It's a slow erosion of function. And because society tells us that being tired or short of breath is just a part of getting old, people dismiss their symptoms. They think, oh, I'm just 70 now, I should be slower. But that dismissal is what leads to emergency room visits that could have been avoided.
So we are essentially gaslighting ourselves into thinking we are just aging when our hearts are actually failing?
Precisely. We've become comfortable with decline. But clinical heart failure isn't natural aging, it's a functional collapse. Today, I want to wake people up to the reality that your body is constantly sending signals. If you know how to read them, you can gain decades of high-quality life. If you ignore them, you're essentially living on a ticking bomb.
That is a heavy start, but a necessary one. We need to talk about the first sign, which sounds so mundane that most people would never think it's a heart issue. It's what you call unexplained air hunger. Now, most of us feel out of breath when we exercise. What makes this different?
This is the critical distinction, Sarah. Normal shortness of breath happens after you exert yourself. You run for the bus, you get winded. But heart-related air hunger, or dyspnea, starts showing up during activities that used to be easy. Walking to the mailbox, vacuuming the living room. But here's the red flag version. What happens when you lie down to sleep?
Wait, so just the act of lying flat can be a sign of heart failure?
Yes, this is called orthopnea. When your heart is weak, it can't pump blood efficiently. When you lie down, the fluid in your body redistributes. It moves from your legs up toward your chest. A healthy heart handles this easily. A failing heart allows that fluid to back up into the lungs. People feel like they are suffocating or drowning while lying flat. Do you use 2 or 3 pillows to prop yourself up at night so you can breathe better? If you do, that isn't just a comfort preference. It's a major clinical warning sign.
I think many people listening right now are looking at their pillows and feeling a chill. It's so easy to think, I just breathe better this way, without realizing the fluid is actually filling the air sacs in your lungs.
Exactly. And it often leads to what we call paroxysmal nocturnal dyspnea. You fall asleep fine, but 2 hours later you wake up gasping for air, feeling a sense of panic, and you have to sit on the edge of the bed or open a window to catch your breath. Most people think it's sleep apnea or a nightmare. It's not. It's your heart struggling to keep your lungs clear of fluid. It's terrifying because it's so easy to ignore. But if the lungs are the first place the fluid goes, where else does it hide? That leads us to our second sign, which is even more deceptive because it looks like a simple weight gain issue. But before we get into that, let me ask you, have you noticed your shoes getting tighter lately?
We were just talking about how fluid can back up into the lungs, causing that terrifying air hunger. But Dr. Julian, you mentioned that fluid doesn't just stay in the chest, it travels. And for many seniors, it shows up in their legs and feet. This is our second sign, the mystery swelling.
That's right, Sarah. In the medical world, we call this peripheral edema. But to the average person, it just looks like their ankles are getting thicker. Maybe they think they've been standing too long or they've had too much salt. But heart-related swelling has a very specific personality.
What do you mean by the personality of the swelling? How can we tell the difference between I walked too much today and my heart is failing?
Look for what we call pitting. If you press your thumb into the swollen area, usually the top of the foot or the inner ankle, for 5 seconds, and it leaves an indentation, a pit that stays there for several seconds after you let go, that is not normal. That is a sign of significant fluid retention. A healthy body reabsorbs that fluid. A failing heart causes the venous pressure to rise so high that the liquid is literally squeezed out of the blood vessels and into the surrounding tissue.
I've seen that before, where someone's socks leave deep, angry red rings around their calves that stay for hours. Is that a warning?
Absolutely. If your socks are leaving deep grooves every single day, your heart is struggling with the volume of fluid in your system. But here's the part that really catches people off guard. This fluid doesn't just stay in the ankles, it can move into the abdomen. Have you noticed that your waistband is getting tighter, but you haven't actually changed your diet? Or perhaps you feel full very quickly after eating only a few bites of food.
Wait, so heart failure can make you feel bloated or full? That sounds like a digestive issue. Why would the heart cause that?
It's all connected, Sarah. When the right side of the heart weakens, the blood backs up into the veins that drain the liver and the digestive tract. This causes the liver to become congested. We call it a congestive liver. And it causes the walls of your intestines to swell with fluid. When your intestines are swollen, they can't process food properly, and you feel bloated, nauseous, or full after a tiny meal.
This is why it's so dangerous. A senior might go to a gastroenterologist for stomach pain, get some antacid, and go home, while the real killer, the heart, is never even checked. It's a game of hide and seek, where the stakes are life and death.
You hit the nail on the head. And because this swelling happens gradually, people just think they are putting on weight as they age. They buy bigger pants, they buy bigger shoes. They don't realize they aren't gaining fat, they are gaining water because their pump is failing. If you gain more than 2 or 3 pounds in a single day or 5 pounds in a week, that is almost certainly fluid. And that fluid is a heavy burden for an already tired heart.
It's a vicious cycle. The more fluid you hold, the harder the heart has to work, which makes it weaker, which causes more fluid. But what if the symptoms aren't physical in the way we expect? What if the sign of a failing heart is actually happening in your brain? That's the third sign, and it's the one that breaks families apart because they think it's dementia. Dr. Julian, how does a heart issue look like a brain issue?
This is perhaps the most heartbreaking part of our discussion. We often think of the heart and the brain as two separate entities, but they are intrinsically linked by the flow of blood. Dr. Julian, you've seen patients who are brought in because their families thought they were developing Alzheimer's, only to find out the problem was actually their heart. How is that possible?
It's a concept called brain fog or cognitive fatigue, but in the context of heart failure, it's a matter of supply and demand. Your brain is the most oxygen-hungry organ in your body. It requires a constant, high-pressure stream of oxygenated blood. When your heart's ejection fraction, that's the percentage of blood it pumps out with each beat, drops, the brain is the first to suffer from the reduced supply.
So the brain is essentially being starved of its fuel.
Exactly. It's like a car engine that isn't getting enough gasoline. It sputters. In a senior, this looks like confusion, sudden forgetfulness, or an inability to focus on a conversation. They might feel spaced out or unusually irritable. The family sees grandma forgetting where she put her keys or getting confused at the grocery store, and they think dementia. But if you look closer, this confusion is often accompanied by extreme, bone-deep exhaustion.
How do we distinguish this heart-related exhaustion from just being a bit tired after a long day?
Normal fatigue goes away with rest. Heart failure fatigue does not. If you wake up after 8 hours of sleep and you feel like you just ran a marathon, or if the simple task of getting dressed makes you need to sit down and rest for 20 minutes, that is a sign that your heart is failing to provide enough blood to your muscles and your brain. The body is smart. It starts shunting blood. It pulls blood away from the non-essential parts like your arms and legs to try to protect the brain and heart. This makes your limbs feel heavy like lead.
Lead-heavy limbs and a foggy brain. It sounds like living underwater.
That is a perfect description. And because the brain isn't getting enough blood, the levels of certain chemicals in the blood, like sodium, can get out of balance. This causes further confusion and even personality changes. I've had patients who became suddenly aggressive or depressed, and once we stabilized their heart and cleared the fluid, their dementia disappeared. They were back to their old selves.
That is incredible. Imagine how many seniors are in assisted living facilities right now being treated for cognitive decline when they actually have a treatable heart condition. It's a silent epidemic of misdiagnosis.
It truly is. And the tragedy is that these 3 signs, the air hunger, the swelling, and the brain fog, often appear together, but we treat them as separate problems. We give a pill for the breathing, a pill for the swelling, and we accept the brain fog as aging. We never look at the pump. We never look at the heart.
But we are going to change that today. If someone is listening and realizing, wait, I have 2 out of 3 of these signs, what is the first thing they should do? Is there a specific test they need to ask for that isn't just a standard checkup? We'll cover the action plan for survival in the next part. Dr. Julian, we've painted a pretty somber picture, but the good news is that heart failure, especially when caught early, is manageable. We just have to know how to catch it. If someone is sitting at home and they've realized their ankles are pitted and they're propping themselves up on pillows at night, what is the very first step?
The first step is to stop making excuses. Don't say, "I'll wait until my next annual checkup." You need to call your primary doctor or cardiologist and tell them specifically, "I am experiencing symptoms of fluid retention and orthopnea." Use those words. It signals to the medical staff that this is a priority.
Are there specific tests that we should insist on? Because sometimes a basic stethoscope exam isn't enough to hear the early stages of heart failure, right?
You are absolutely right, Sarah. A doctor might listen to your heart and say, "It sounds fine," but that doesn't tell the whole story. The gold standard for an initial screen is a blood test called NT-proBNP.
NT-proBNP, that's a bit of a mouthful. What does it measure?
Think of it as a distress signal from the heart. When the heart muscle is stretched or under too much pressure, exactly what happens in heart failure, it releases the specific protein into the bloodstream. If your levels are high, it's a near certain indicator that your heart is struggling. It is a much more sensitive test than just a physical exam.
And after the blood test, if the distress signal is high, what happens next?
Then we need to look at the heart in action. That requires an echocardiogram. It's an ultrasound of the heart. It's non-invasive, it doesn't hurt, but it allows us to see the valves, the size of the chambers, and most importantly, the ejection fraction. That is the number that tells us exactly how much blood your heart is pumping out with every beat. A normal number is between 55% and 70%. If you're at 40%, we know we have work to do.
Knowing your number sounds just as important as knowing your blood pressure or your cholesterol.
It's arguably more important for seniors. Once we have that number, we can start the 4 pillars of treatment. Modern medicine has made incredible leaps. We have medications now, like SGLT2 inhibitors and ARNIs, that don't just manage symptoms, they actually help the heart remodel itself and get stronger. We can literally turn back the clock on some of the damage.
That is so hopeful. It's not a death sentence, it's a management plan. But I want to talk about lifestyle for a second. We hear a lot about low-salt diets. Is that really as important as the doctors say, or is it just an old-fashioned recommendation?
It is vital. For a healthy person, salt is fine. For someone with a weakening heart, salt is like a magnet for water. 1 gram of extra salt can hold on to a massive amount of fluid. If you have heart failure and you eat a salty meal, you could wake up the next morning 2 pounds heavier and unable to breathe. It's that direct.
So we've got the blood tests, the ultrasound, the modern meds, and the salt control. But there's one more thing we need to discuss, the psychology of the senior. Why are so many people afraid to get diagnosed? We'll tackle the fear and the roadmap to a long, active life in our final segment.
We are in the home stretch of this vital conversation. We've covered the signs, the air hunger, the swelling, the brain fog. We've covered the tests, the NT-proBNP and the echo. But Dr. Julian, there is an elephant in the room. Many seniors are afraid to go to the doctor because they think a diagnosis of heart failure means their life is over. They hear the word failure and they think end of the road.
I hate the term heart failure. I really do. It sounds so final. In reality, it should be called heart insufficiency or heart fatigue. It means your heart isn't working at 100%, but it doesn't mean it has stopped. I have patients in their 80s who were diagnosed with heart failure 10 years ago, and today they are traveling, gardening, and playing with their grandkids. Why? Because they took action.
So the diagnosis isn't the end. It's actually the beginning of a better supported life.
Exactly. Without a diagnosis, you are struggling through every day. You're exhausted, you're confused, you're uncomfortable. With the diagnosis and the right treatment, the fog lifts. The swelling goes down. You get your energy back. You're not just surviving, you're actually living again. The fear of the name shouldn't keep you from the cure.
Let's recap those 3 signs one last time for everyone listening. Maybe someone who just tuned in or someone who needs to hear it again to really let it sink in.
Number 1, shortness of breath that is new, especially when you lie down or wake up gasping at night. Number 2, swelling in your ankles, feet, or abdomen that leaves a pit when you press it. And number 3, unusual fatigue or mental confusion that doesn't go away with a good night's sleep. If you have these, don't wait. Don't let your healthy breakfast or your age be your excuse.
And remember, your body is a sophisticated machine. It doesn't break down without warning. It sends signals. The question is, are you brave enough to listen? Dr. Julian, thank you for potentially saving lives today with this information.
It's been my pleasure. To everyone listening, your heart has taken care of you for 60, 70, 80 years. It's time you return the favor. Take that first step. Get the blood test. Life is too beautiful to spend it gasping for air.
Beautifully said. That's all for today's episode of the Longevity Lab. If this episode helped you, or if you think it could save someone you love, please share it. Send it to your siblings, your parents, or your friends. You never know who is currently propping themselves up on pillows thinking it's just old age. I'm Sarah, and we'll see you in the next episode. Stay healthy, stay proactive, and keep your heart strong.
Goodbye, everyone, and stay heart healthy.